The football helmet symbolizes resilience and power and is radically transformed throughout history. It's gone from the leather headsets to the hard plastic and beyond, and some improvements have been made to the inside and the outside. Today we talk with Timothy P. Brown about one of the first external paddings of the football helmet, the predecessor of today's Guardian. And it's coming up in just a moment with Tim.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the Gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And we are ready for a dig today. It's Tuesday. It's FootballArchaeology.com day with Timothy P. Brown, the founder of that site. Tim, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Hey, Darren. Good to see you.
Yeah.
And looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, looking forward to chatting to you too with your camera crew in the background, filming your cheer team to root you on.
Yeah, I'm going to move to the side so people can see that. Yeah, it's just an old, I think it's actually from the teens, but not positive. And I can look at the source, but I think it's University of Pennsylvania. So it would have been Franklin Field before they added the second deck.
Yeah, that loudspeaker that he was holding reminds me of my dunce cap I used to wear when I was in school.
Yeah, I never had to wear that, but
no.
You and I are different in that way.
I'm a big dunce, that's for sure. Been called worse. So, Tim, you have a really interesting piece tonight. Speaking of headgear, that's odd, on some football attire that maybe up to a few years ago would be like foreign to us, but this is maybe some early generations of what we see today on NFL players.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I don't know. I don't remember if you said Absorblo or not, but we're talking about Absorblo, which is a brand.
I wanted you to say it first.
Okay. So Absorblo. So, it's intended to absorb a blow, right? And, if you think about, a number of times we've talked about, in the past, teams, or mostly, manufacturers, but teams and individuals have tried to create equipment, or they've tried to use some new technology to improve the game in some way. And sometimes they just don't have everything together to make it work. It could be that they just don't have quite the right materials. They don't have the right manufacturing process, or there's design issues. So, what this is about is back in the 1950s, McGregor, which then made a lot of football equipment, sponsored research with the Cornell Aeronautical Laboratory. And the research was to develop synthetic materials that could cushion impact, right? And so aeronautical laboratory, so it probably made sense possibly for, some early space kind of, efforts, outer space efforts, but more directly at the time, probably, jet fighter pilots and, things along those lines. But, so pilots in general. And so they ended up creating a synthetic material that, something akin to it probably was in most football helmets, late 50s to the, well into the 70s. Okay. And so it was, what they were trying to do was, find a way to create a material that would absorb blows and cushion their impact. And so one of the first applications was they used it on the outside of helmets. And so if you think about nowadays, especially the past 2-3 years, you've seen a lot of teams wearing those Guardian covers on top of their caps, on top of their helmets, because they reduce, they're supposed to reduce either the severity or the potential to the incidence of concussions. And those caps look goofy to us, but still, they're if they work, they work. And the teams typically just wear them in practice. They don't wear them in games. So there have been times in the past where college and NFL players would wear some form of protective cover atop their plastic helmet. So back in the 50s, what McGregor did, and I know they had the patent was pending in 1955. So it was, that kind of period where it came out. And so what people most know Absorblo by was they created this, strip that was on the top of the helmet. So where the stripes might normally be on a helmet, the strip, started at, above like the nose bumper and then went kind of diagonally towards the back of the helmet and covered the back. So, and it was a strip that was, I don't know, not quite an inch, maybe it was an inch, that rose above the helmet. And
So you're saying about an inch thick?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. So it was about an inch thick, and I think that it was white normally, but teams would paint them whatever color they whatever was appropriate for their helmets. And so a lot of teams adopted this thing. I mean, it wasn't like I don't think it was even like 25%, but teams like Cornell, they were kind of the guinea pigs for it. Dartmouth used it. So did Ohio State. So did Duke. And there's probably others, but I just those are the teams that I had found when I wrote this tidbit. I had found it just looking at photographs. I could identify that they had done this, and actually that because this Absorblo device, as I said, it kind of started right kind of the center of the forehead, just above the nose bumper, and then it kind of went diagonally back across the helmet. If you're familiar with Dartmouth's helmet, they've got two thin stripes that follow that same pattern. And I went,
Their helmets are similar to Michigan's helmets, correct?
no,
No?
Princeton has the winged helmet look, and so does Delaware.
Okay,
And
Delaware. That's Delaware's what I'm thinking. Okay.
but Dartmouth has they've retained this look since the time that they adopted Absorblo helmets, or thereabouts. But it's so I think it probably I think their design probably comes from the Absorblo device.
Hmm.
And again, you're going to have to look up a picture of if you look up Dartmouth 1965, or if you there's a site out there called Helmet History, which just has images of every team you can imagine.
I was sitting there thinking about. I know Blaze that runs that, and maybe I can get
Okay.
some images. We'll throw up here as we're talking here when we do the
Yeah,
put on
well,
YouTube.
it's a great site. So give him
Yeah,
my compliments. I
yeah,
love that site.
yeah. He's awesome.
So, anyways, so so it kind of set off. If you think about it, you've seen other teams that had that design that subsequently dropped it. So there was a period where they kind of that this Absorblo thing impacted the design of helmets, or at least the striping, etc. on helmets. So, but then they stopped using it, mid 60s, and I've read some things so that best as I can tell, the reason they dropped it is what they found is while it did absorb the impact of the hit, the problem was that in some ways, while it was softer and it absorbed the impact more than say a plastic helmet, what ended up happening is that the person who was wearing the Absorblo, their head kind of got momentarily stuck to whatever they were hitting. So if two helmets came crashing together, they kind of got stuck because of the softness or the flexibility of the Absorblo, and that actually created more torque, or I'm not a physicist, so I may be using the wrong term, but it actually proved more harmful than the cushioning protection that it provided.
Hmm.
And which is one of the reasons why they still don't use any kind of a, like those Guardian things. They don't use them in games. They use them in practice. Um, so I mean, best as I understand, that's why those devices never really, I mean, they proved popular for a while, and then they disappeared because they proved to be more harmful than the good that they provided.
Yeah, I know you mentioned there was the one from the 80s, Pro Caps, which were
Yeah.
developed by, you mentioned in your post, but they were developed by a guy here from my area. He was the inventor of the Pro Cap. And, we know like the Buffalo Bills, a few of their players were using them. But theirs were interesting because they were painted the color of the Bills helmets. They had the red and the white and blue, sort of like the Bills helmets are now. I think they're pretty similar back in the late 80s and 90s when they used them. But the Guardian, I was always curious. I have never seen anything but the black Guardians with the whatever there is on the clamshell design or whatever it's on all over them. They never have them in any other color, and I was wondering, why they wouldn't do that for
Well,
those.
okay. I mean, I'd swear I've seen them in a bunch of different colors, but
Oh, have you? Okay.
yeah, because they're kind of like, well, they got all those little ridgy kind of things.
Yeah, it's almost like scales of a
Yeah,
alligator or dragon or
yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm assuming the research shows that they're effective for that purpose, but again, nobody wears them in games. So, um, the other thing I just want to point out was that I just last week I bought a new sporting goods catalog, and it's the 1955 McGregor catalog. So
Oh,
it
okay.
was, that was right in the midst of, they're just developing this thing, and it's pointing out that they, have patent pending on it. And so I'm going to do a new tidbit on it. But back then they were putting, teams were still transitioning, because some teams still wanted to wear leather because the coaches believed leather was better, plastic helmets were too hard, da da da. And so they were putting Absorblo on the exterior of helmets, on the exterior of leather helmets, and maybe even, well, for sure they were putting the center stripe on the exterior of plastic helmets. But on the leather helmets, they used it on the interior, and then they also used it like on the kind of the ear muffs. So, back then there were helmets where the ears kind of protruded
Hmm.
from the general roundness of the helmet shell. Um, and they also had it especially like, on the Cro-Magnon, right at the eyebrows. So, and then they used it for shoulder pads, hip pads, knee pads, um, thigh pads, etc. So it became kind of McGregor's primary padding for the second half of the 50s. So, anyways, more to come on that one.
Okay. Well, probably this will be airing probably just shortly after you'll be posting on new posts. So, folks, if it's not out yet, keep an eye out for it. It should be coming out soon with more on the McGregor Absorblo on footballarchaeology.com. Tim, why don't you go ahead and share with everybody where they can find articles like this older one that we're talking about tonight, this new one that you have on Absorblo, and some of the other interesting items that you have.
Sure. Best way to find the articles is to go to footballarchaeology.com. In the upper right hand corner, there's a search function, so you can find old articles. I will tell you that, I'm trying to move more and more of the archives to the paid version. So, you can sign up for free. You're going to get about a third of the total content. If you're a free subscriber, you get everything. If you're a paid subscriber, alternatively, you can follow me on, on Substack, on their app, on Threads, and on Twitter as well. Although I think so far maybe two people have followed me on Threads. So,
You're just
anyways,
hanging by a thread.
yeah, that's right. Very thin thread.
That's right. That's one more person than I have on Threads. So thanks, Mom, by the way. So, Tim, we really appreciate you coming on here and sharing this interesting story of, something that's from the past, this helmet protection to protect player safety. That's ultimately important. That's making sort of a resurrection a couple times in our lifetime. So that's pretty cool too. So we really appreciate it, and we would love to talk to you again about next week about something new
Very good. Or something old.
or something old.
Alrighty, we'll see you next week.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.